Ladies and gentlemen, probably mainly gentlemen, Kings basketball is right around the corner, and I couldn't be more excited. No, I know you guys are excited too, and a huge reason for this, the main reason probably, most likely, is because the Kings just had the best offseason they've ever had, and I don't think it's even up for a debate. If you think I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments, but listen, we brought in the biggest free agent acquisition in franchise history in DeMar DeRozan. We re-signed the guy who, up until we signed DeRozan, was probably the best free agent we had ever signed in Malik Monk. And we extended the best coach we've had since Rick Adelman. That coach, of course, being Mike Brown. We had a good draft. I think Devin Carter's going to be a stud once he's fully healthy. But yeah, man, you add all that up, and I don't think it's even a question. Best offseason ever for the Sacramento Kings. And it's got me pumped for the start of the year. I cannot wait. Luckily, we got MLB playoffs, college football, NFL, all that to keep us entertained until tip-off on opening night. But that is still a couple weeks away. Lucky for you guys, though, I will be posting a ton of videos leading up to opening night in Sacramento, breaking down the team from De'Aaron Fox to Colby Jones, talking about what I'm excited for, what I'm worried about, why the national media is wrong yet again about the Kings. And yeah, it's going to be a fun time, so stick around, subscribe, and do what you need to do so that you don't miss out. But back to the offseason, it was a big one. A lot of moving parts. Obviously, I just went over the big acquisitions, but we also lost a few guys that were staples of this team for the last few years. So let's break it all down. Back in June, before free agency even hit, before the draft even, the heart and soul of the Kings, Malik Monk, chose to stay. I can't even imagine what this team would be like without him. And honestly, when Luka fell on his knee and, he was out the rest of the year, I had come to grips with the fact that Monk had played his last game in Sacramento. The Kings could only offer him so much, like $78 million, I think, around there. And I thought for sure someone like Detroit or San Antonio would offer him something crazy like $100 million. But Monk didn't even test free agency. He decided to stay in Sacramento. And it was big that he did so. He made that decision before the draft so that, we didn't have to operate out of fear, not knowing whether or not he would be back. And yeah, man, he took less money to come off the bench, which shows a lot about his character, shows a lot about who Mike Brown is, because, those two are close. And I think Mike Brown being here is one of the main reasons he decided to stay. And it also shows how much he enjoys Sacramento and the fans. Oh, and of course, he's playing basketball with his best friend in De'Aaron Fox. So that definitely means something to him as well. But yeah, man, having him back is going to be huge. That first game when he comes off the bench at home against the Timberwolves, it's going to be electric, man. So happy that we'll have him in our building for the next 4 years. The energy he brings, and obviously, the stats and the numbers he puts up are just incredible. He should have been a 2-time Sixth Man of the Year award winner by now. That's a discussion for another time, though. To put it simply, Malik Monk coming back, if that is all that happened this offseason, I would have been so happy about that. But obviously, that's not all that happened this offseason, which leads me to our next big acquisition of the summer, DeMar DeRozan, who, like I mentioned earlier, is the best free agent we've ever signed. And yes, I know it was technically a sign and trade, but as far as the people who have chosen to come to Sacramento, this is the biggest name. And it's crazy to me that people were even debating if this was a win for us. Put it this way, would you rather have Harrison Barnes and Chris Duarte, or would you rather have DeMar DeRozan? That's essentially the swap that we made there. And, people say, DeRozan's not a good fit. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't shoot the three ball. He's 35, or at least he's going to be 35. And even if that were all true, some of those things are true, like he is. There's no denying the fact that he's about to be 35. Even with all that, he's still way better than Barnes. But, of course, as soon as Barnes is off the Kings, people start acting like he's a premier 3-and-D guy, which, maybe he was 4 years ago, but he hasn't been that in a long time. Still love HB, great guy, but DeMar is a massive upgrade. And it's not like Harrison Barnes is 27 either. He's in his early 30s. It's not like we're trading away a young asset or anything like that. And yes, he is reaching his mid to late 30s, but he's still an all-star caliber player who's been one of, if not the most, clutch players in the league. He's not a perfect fit, but he's an obvious upgrade for the Kings. Obviously, in an ideal world, we would have gone out and traded for an athletic, rim protecting forward who's great on defense, can space the floor, knock down his threes, doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective, team friendly contract. But newsflash, that guy doesn't exist. And if he did, no team who has that guy is going to trade him away. So yeah, I don't know like what people were really expecting. As far as like realistic moves that the Kings could have made, I think this is like better than anything I could have like expected really. The only guy I can think of that like I would have liked more is Lauri Markkanen, but I don't know if you guys remember, Danny Ainge was asking for like 4 first round picks, 4 pick swaps, and then like 4 second round picks plus like 2, rotational pieces as well. So yeah, Kings weren't doing that deal. I don't think a single team in the league is doing that deal. So yeah, as far as like realistic moves that could have been made, this is pretty darn good. This is like damn near best case scenario for the Kings. So I know Kings fans are super excited. I still don't know why like the national media hasn't caught on that this is a good move for the Kings. I guess once we start winning games, they'll have to like come around to that idea. But other positives that DeMar brings to the table, he's going to add a ton to the culture here. And obviously, he's going to add a ton to the offense and quality of play on the court overall. When you play in an ultra-competitive Western Conference, you just need as much talent as you can get. And with the addition of DeRozan, this is now the most talented team the Kings have had in 20 years. But not only that, DeRozan solves one of the Kings' biggest problems. 2 of them, actually. First of all, he's a career 84% free throw shooter. Kings were the worst free throw shooting team in the league last year, so he'll help there a ton. Also, over the last 2 seasons, the only player who's been better than Fox in the clutch is DeMar DeRozan. So that gives us another clutch performer to give the ball to if and when our offense stalls out at the end of games, which, last year, that kind of happened a lot. We blew 13 double-digit leads last year. I don't think that happens this year with DeMar on this team. So with all that said, I think if DeMar went anywhere else, people would be praising that team for making such a great move. But since it's the Kings, for whatever reason, it's a terrible move by the Kings. But a move that nobody could discredit or disagree with. The Kings gave Mike Brown a 3-year extension. We're establishing a culture in Sacramento, something that hasn't been done since the Rick Adelman days. I was kind of worried that they were going to drag this out, but I'm glad it got done early and quick. I mean, he's the best coach we've had in 20 years. Easy decision to extend him. Don't really have a ton else to say. Love Mike Brown, and happy that we're going to have him for another 3 years on top of whatever. I think it was like 2 more years still left on his contract. So I think he's going to be here for 5 years. It might only be 4. Somebody fact check me there. The next guy I want to talk about is our first round draft pick, Devin Carter. We took him 13th overall. He was the Big East Player of the Year after averaging 19.7 points per game, 8.7 rebounds per game, which is a crazy number for a guy his size, 3.6 assists, and 1.8 steals on 47.3% shooting from the field. He led the conference in scoring and finished 10th in the country in defensive rebounds. 10th in the country as a guard is insane. I'm really excited about this pick, this prospect. At the very least, I think he can be a better, more well-rounded Davion Mitchell. And honestly, with his rebounding ability, we might be looking at like a Josh Hart type of prospect. It sucks he's going to be hurt most of the year. I don't really see him making much of an impact this year, but he could and should be a perfect piece off the bench in the years to come. Maybe backup point guard of the future. And obviously, his ceiling is higher than a bench role. But, early on, especially given the guys who are going to be on this team for a while, he's going to be coming off the bench. Hopefully, because he's more of a defensive-minded type of guy, he can pair well with Malik. That's going to be a fun little backcourt duo coming off the bench for, the next several years. Speaking of backup point guards, and this leads us to the other side of our offseason, the subtractions that we made. I was high on Davion coming out of college, and he had his moments, especially in that series against the Warriors. He had a couple good games. He locked down Steph a little bit. And last year, I thought toward the end of the year, his shooting was coming around. He'd always been a good defender. That was never a question. It was just, could he bring value on the offensive side of the floor enough to make Mike Brown play him, which didn't really happen. Keon Ellis established himself kind of in the role that I think us as Kings fans always envisioned Davion would take. But, Keon, he's lengthier. He was hitting his shot on a more consistent basis. And honestly, might be a better defender than Davion Mitchell, who, I mean, that was like his calling card coming out of college. Obviously, his nickname, Off Night, still one of the coldest nicknames in the game, but just couldn't really bring it. I hope he has better days ahead of him in Toronto. But, yeah, man, the move, trading Davion and Sasha for Jalen McDaniels, who I'll talk about in a little bit as well. Like, was that just a salary dump? Kind of got to look back at that trade. Curious what your guys' opinions are on that move. But yeah, then the other piece of that trade was Sasha Vezenkov, who then, essentially just retired after. And, good for him. I'm glad he's back home where he's happy and fans appreciate him. But yeah, man, I thought he looked okay when he did get playing time, but Mike Brown never really let him loose, which, he was a bit of a liability on defense and was kind of a one-trick pony on offense. He did finish the year shooting 37.5% from three, which is definitely good, but when that's essentially all you're bringing to the table, it's just not quite good enough. And to put it simply, I mean, his game just didn't fit the NBA. And that's not like a knock on him as a player at all. He's not a bad player. His style just is better suited for the EuroLeague. And, that happens to a lot of guys. Not everybody coming out of the EuroLeague is going to be Luka Doncic or even Nemanja Bjelica, Like, you don't have to be, an MVP frontrunner to make it out of the EuroLeague. Like, you can find a role. And I think, if Sasha gave it, a little bit longer, I think he could have established himself as like a bench piece, as a rotational guy for sure. Because, I mean, his shooting is out of this world, And, all that said, like, he never really looked happy to be here. I don't know if he was homesick or what, if he just didn't like his role. But yeah, all that said, I think it was probably best for both sides that he moved on. Another guy I want to talk about, which, I mean, up until I looked it up a couple minutes ago, could not for the life of me remember what happened to Chris Duarte. I knew he wasn't on the team anymore, but I couldn't remember, like, where he was moved to. And he was part of the DeRozan sign and trade. So he's on the Bulls now. I will say one thing, bringing it back to Sasha. I never really understood why Duarte's leash was so damn long, but, Sasha kind of had the shortest leash on the team. There are obviously different types of players, but still, like, Duarte was really bad at times, and I don't think Sasha ever got to that point where, like, he was just, like, an extreme negative. But yeah, that's really all I got to say on Duarte. When we acquired him from Indiana, I really thought it could be, like, a sneaky good move, and it just never really panned out. I think he does have, like, potential, and who knows? I mean, he'll probably get a lot of playing time in Chicago. Obviously, best wishes for Duarte, but as you'll kind of start to notice, all the guys that Mike Brown kind of stopped trusting are all off the team. And that goes with Davion Mitchell, that goes with Sasha, it goes with Duarte. Harrison Barnes even is off the team, which, to talk about him real quick, he is one of the nicest, best human beings that's ever stepped foot in Sacramento. And he had some great moments with the Kings. I feel like people forget all those game winners he had, back in like 2019. And, throughout his career with the Kings. Obviously, he missed the big one in that playoff series against Golden State. But it kind of sucks that that's kind of the lasting memory I feel like a lot of Kings fans have of him. Because, I mean, he was the most consistent guy on the team. I guess aside from Fox. But, even like when Fox was still kind of developing into who he is now, like Barnes was a very reliable guy. I mean, did he start every game of his career with the Kings? I'll have to look into that. But, yeah, I mean, just definition of reliable and also the definition of just like best guy ever. I mean, I'm not really talking about him in the most eloquent way, but I mean, we all know, like Harrison Barnes, it sucks that his play couldn't really keep up, but yeah, he'll be missed. But like I was kind of mentioning with DeRozan and all that, like, we kind of moved on. We've gotten better because of it. But a few other guys here that are no longer on the team. JaVale McGee, he's a free agent at the age of 36. And I could see him being one of those guys that gets picked up off of free agency, once injuries start hitting and all that. But he was really fun to have on the team. Caught some crazy lobs. He was just fun to kind of see on the bench as part of like the bench mob and all that. Kessler Edwards, another guy. I had to check if he was still in the league, but he is on the Mavericks actually, which is kind of a sneaky good pickup for them. I'm sure he'll get some sort of playing time there. And then there are actually a couple other additions that I did not talk about. One of them being Jalen McDaniels, which not really sure if he's gonna play, and I'm not really sure why we even traded for him, other than I guess like in order to dump Sasha, who they probably knew wasn't going to play for them anyway. And then they drafted Davion's replacement, so that explains that trade, I guess. But I'm pretty sure, did that go down before the draft? Maybe not. I might be getting that mixed up. Anyway, when we first traded for him, I was like, all right, I know that name, but I think I was attaching Jaden McDaniels' stats to Jalen McDaniels' name. I thought he was a better player, I'll be real. So yeah, kind of low on him, mainly because I don't know how he's going to find playing time unless there's like some injuries. Because, Trey Lyles is above him in the rotation. When Devin Carter is back and healthy, he'll be getting more playing time than McDaniels. We got Keon, Kevin Herter. Obviously, the guys like Malik and Keaton, I don't even need to talk about them. Alex Len's kind of our only rim protector, so he's going to see those minutes. And then even this next guy, Jordan McLaughlin, probably going to, he's our backup point guard, you'd assume. So, yeah, I don't really know where he fits on this team, Jalen McDaniels I'm talking about. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to, really assess that move. But even if it is just to kind of shed the salary of Sasha and Davion, I guess that move is worth it because it probably helped us get DeMar. But yeah, I guess we'll just kind of have to wait and see, man, on McDaniels. That video of him finding out he got traded was pretty funny, though. And then, yeah, Jordan McLaughlin, especially now with the injury to Devin Carter, this is our backup point guard. He's another guy whose stats I thought would be better, just based on the eye test, what I've seen from him in his career when we played the Timberwolves, or even watching him in the playoffs. I thought his stats would be better because I feel like he's a really solid, quality veteran guard who, can come off the bench and just be a floor general. I feel like he's the type of guy you tend to see on the bench of a contending team. Be interesting to see kind of what role he plays when everybody's fully healthy, if, it gets to that point where everyone on the roster is healthy. I still think he'd get playing time over McDaniels, but at the very least, I think it's a solid presence to have in the locker room. And, he is, from what I've heard and seen, I remember, seeing a lot of this stuff when we first signed him. He's supposed to be, a really good defender. There was a stat, of course, I could not find it. I got to start saving these things when I see them. This was 2 months ago. But the stat was he's one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. His defensive rating when he's on the court is something crazy. So you just kind of have to take my word for it because, of course, I can't find that stat. So yeah, man, here's our additions. Here's our subtractions. And I think anybody with a brain can see that our additions greatly outweigh our subtractions. I think we're one of the most improved teams in the league. Aside from, the Knicks and the Thunder. And yeah, I can't really even think of another team. If you can, let me know in the comments. But yeah, I think this was a fantastic offseason for the Kings. I don't know if it could have gone any better, honestly. I am a biased Kings fan, of course, but I am super high on this team and think we can make a legitimate run in the playoffs. Just got to stay healthy and win the games we're supposed to win. And the way you do that is you make your free throws and close out games. And we have two of the best closers in the game on the same team now. So yeah, I just think this is going to be a good team. Plain and simple. Preseason starts tomorrow. By the time you're watching this, it might have already happened. Or it might be happening right now. So maybe tune in if you're not sure. But yeah, I'll be talking about preseason and so much more. So stay tuned, ladies and gents. Or just gents. No judgment. I get it. Go Kings. Light the beam.